August 18th, it's kind of exciting.
Primary day.
Primary day. Okay, some people don't care. I understand it, but most people care about who's going to be the nominee for governor, who's going to be in the Republican Party, who's going to be the nominee for governor in the Democratic Party. And of course, we have other statewide races as well.
Is it a cinch bet in your mind right now?
Most people would say that on the Republican side, Byron Donalds, who has raised, 80 some odd $80 million, still has 60 some odd in the bank, is a shoo-in largely because his opponents, Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins, House Speaker Paul Renner, and a couple of others, have raised very little money in comparison. Money doesn't necessarily guarantee anything. We'll harken back to Jeb Bush running for president. He had tons and tons of dough, more than anybody else, and he ended up with please clap. So, he didn't win anything.
I was there in New Hampshire. Was not happy. How many times for it?
So so the money doesn't say it all.
But it says a lot.
But you have to be running a good campaign. And so far, Byron Donalds seems to be running a good campaign.
Dave Jolly, Gwen Graham as lieutenant governor on the Democratic side. I mean, do you?
I think David Jolly, a former Republican who became a Democrat, or former member of Congress. Gwen Graham, whose father, Governor Bob Graham, was beloved by Democrats. She's had one term in Congress. I think the two of them make a great combination as governor and lieutenant governor candidates. Whether or not that's going to be enough in the very red state of Florida, we'll see. I know that, the Jolly campaign is sort of focused on this idea that we're not going to be duking it out. We're going to be, happy-go-lucky, talk about issues, and we're just not going to get into the mud on things. And maybe that'll work. There's some belief that people are tired of all the back and forth fighting that goes on over everything. We'll see. I mean, and I think they also hope that, Donald Trump endorsed Donalds.
Mm-hmm.
Some are arguing now that may turn out to be a weakness, as Donald Trump's popularity seems to be declining.
But still in a red state, it's all relative. And then again, you got to go back to the. And by the way, we're talking about people who seem right now. Byron Donalds, I think we can sit here and try and build drama. I'll be stunned beyond stunned if Byron Donalds.
Oh, you believe in polls?
No, you've beaten that out of me over 15 years. But
I
did believe when you have $81 million and you have the support he has, and when you have President Trump's support right now, and in a primary field, it would be very hard to imagine that he's not the nominee. And
on the off chance of a viewer or listener not being clear about what I've said a million times, most polls are nonsense. Just in case they hadn't heard that.
I'm sure they've gone through.
Yeah.
But money rules, and he's got a mountain of it. And David Jolly, for instance, it's like climbing that mountain in your flip-flops. He's got about $2 million. I think he raised about $255,000 first 12 days of June. Has a couple of million, several million on hand, but you're talking several billion.
Yeah,
the money. And in a state where advertising matters, the days of Lawton Childs walking the state of Florida, walking Lawton, are long over. It's a state where you have to have big money to advertise in the diverse regions of Florida. So it'll be interesting, progressive in that race as well. So we'll see what happens August 18th.
Let me say something about advertising.
Say something about that.
Donald said something interesting the other day. And this is from Florida Politics.
Mm-hmm.
Donalds is sketching out a communications strategy built for what he sees as a fragmented, distrustful media environment. Speaking to the Florida Association of Broadcasters, Donalds said politicians must, quote, over-communicate in all mediums because social media can harden false impressions before candidates can respond. So he argues that short clips, broadcast advertising, are losing effectiveness as voters tune out repeatedly to campaign ads.
Well,
so he's talking about that you need to do more podcasts
and newscasts,
and newscasts. So he's.
Well, what have we been saying all along?
Basically saying social media is what matters.
Well, it's funny that politicians of both parties, have helped create the social media
Yeah.
environment, in part, that we live in, have screened fake news everywhere. Be careful when the monster starts to take a bite out of you. I still say you go to a podcast, go to a newscast, do some longer form interviews, heaven forbid.
Yeah.
We had a guest here in our
But
most
it's also
recent cycle who's saying that we need to talk and get our message out and talk more substantively, perhaps, Brian? Is that what he's saying?
But he also seems to be suggesting doing that little interview, for 30 seconds, bite on a TV show, but is he also suggesting that, TV ads, which was the bedrock of campaigns for decades, is he also suggesting we don't really need to do those as much anymore? Which would be an interesting change, because, a lot of young people don't, well, part of it is, if you think about this, most of what people watch now is streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Streaming doesn't have a lot of ads.
Yeah.
So if you're investing into other formats, broadcast, you're getting a smaller audience. You tend to be getting an older audience, which obviously in Florida, from the standpoint of voters, an older audience is a good thing. But it's an interesting dynamic if we suddenly see campaigns drifting away from what have been traditional media ways of advertising and relying more on podcast and other social media platforms.
Well, we'll see. Listen, I go back to what he said at the start. We're in such a fractured media environment that none of us could have imagined even 10 years ago. We saw it coming, but even as little as 7 or 8 years ago, that I think everybody's recalibrating. I mean, basically, he's fundamentally saying, how do I get my message out?
Yeah.
Do I do it in dribs and drabs? Do I do an in-run around traditional media, which politicians have been doing for many years now? Or do I have to mix it up a little bit more, sit down on the podcast, do a little bit more longer form? Where do I put my dollars? But it goes back to our point at the top of this podcast. When you have $81 million in the bank, it buys you a lot of different strategies. Try and fill all of those communication gaps. And all kidding aside, when you don't have that much money, and when you have a spectrum that's this big, and you're trying to fill it in the communication sphere, and you don't have the money to do it, that's a real problem. So,
did you have more on Paul Renner and Jay Collins?
No, I just, negligible. All kidding aside, negligible polling. We're now into June as you and I sit here right now, and so. Again, want to make very clear to our viewers, listeners, only the voters decide what happens on August 18th. And so part of this is a little tongue-in-cheek with us, but we can read, all kidding aside, early polling. We can see where the money is. We know how vital that is in campaigns. So certainly sitting here today, it's not like we're saying anything hugely revelatory, but it would be hard to imagine that Byron Donalds does not have the huge inside position to be the nominee. And right now on the Democratic side, it would appear right now, could change, that David Jolly. But
one of the interesting.
But then the money disparity, which goes back to how many of those fragmented communication mediums you can take advantage of, come into play. All of which is saying, come on to Top of Mind Florida. We'll be happy to sit here.
Happy to have you.
And we talk to our guests and everything they say. I would note this. I don't know if everybody at home realizes this. We've believed in this for years. We do an interview. Everything said airs. It's we start to finish. We tape what we call live to tape. The whole interview airs. So
right.
And
so
I think it's important.
You hear how they really answer the question.
You get it unvarnished. But we'll see.
Another interesting thing this election cycle is the continued silence of Governor DeSantis.
Why?
Who knows? But the guy he appoints as lieutenant governor is running for governor, and silence. In fact, the funny thing, speaking of ads, if you look at Jay Collins' ads, mostly on social media, right below he puts on there, appointed by Governor Ron DeSantis.
Please endorse me.
So in a way he's sort of suggesting he's been endorsed by Ron DeSantis, even though Ron DeSantis hasn't done that. But why he's so quiet about who he thinks in the Republican Party should be leading, replacing him, carrying on his agenda, you would think. You would think he'd want to weigh in. He's got no influence over Donalds since Trump endorsed him. So anyway, you point it's been barely a year since Jay Collins was appointed as lieutenant governor. You think that the guy who appointed him would at least say nice things about him, you know?
Well, many have argued that the governor is very transactional in that sense, that he will not leave Tallahassee with tons of political friends, because that's just not the way he operates. It's transactional, very uber policy based, and when I'm done, I move on. But it's interesting to me in this cycle, Brian, and I want your take on it, that the governor still, in some ways, hangs very much over what will happen in November at a state level, because every reporter worth their salt should be asking, and I'm sure will be asking, every candidate for state office. How do you feel about this gigantic vote on property taxes, which could slash property taxes?
Yeah.
Which a lot of people say yay, and understandably so, but a lot of people, including people who run our counties, are saying, you don't know the services that are going to be cut, including public safety potentially if it happens. So in a way, Ron DeSantis has put his thumb on the scale in terms of the questions that are going to be asked of all sides. He's there even though he's not on the ballot.
Yeah, and you know, Byron Donalds has said that if this amendment doesn't pass,
Needs 60% of the vote.
it needs 60% of the vote. If it doesn't pass, he's going to go back to it, and he's going to, use the Florida Taxation and Budget Reform Commission, which hasn't met in 20 years, use that as a vehicle to either, as he said, possibly eliminate property taxes or do other property tax reform. So he obviously likes it as an issue. To tell everybody, if this amendment fails in November, I'm going to still try to reform property taxes, is going to be interesting.
Can I switch over for a minute? We haven't talked as much, but we're getting into the deep of summer. Technically, the beginning of summer. It's just felt like it for a month. The U.S. Senate campaign, Ashley Moody, and right now, Alex Vindman, Democrat, which seemed to be the one with the inside track for a face-off. We don't know that for certain, but your thoughts on Ashley Moody, Vindman, and others as we look at our U.S. Senate race?
Yeah, it's a very low-key campaign. There hasn't been much reporting about the campaign so far, in part because there's more focus on the governor's race for most people than the U.S. Senate race. Ashley Moody has Donald Trump's support. Vindman does not, obviously, the Democrat. He's relatively new to the state. He's well known only because of the controversies surrounding him and his brother when they were both in the military and were opposing Trump on some things during the first term. So they made a name for themselves, and his brother's in Congress, if I remember correctly. It's hard to predict anything. He doesn't have any serious Democratic opposition at this point.
But this is the thing, Brian. It's not been that long, and I remember at this point in the cycle, candidates would be out doing interviews, the profiles on all of them, and it's almost odd to me how low key. Although again, I'm used to and grew up and worked in a world where you're out chasing candidates and they're going through the news cycle and talking. I think it does speak to the fact that they've said we don't necessarily need that. Although Byron Donalds, as you said at the outset, may be reassessing how he needs to recalibrate his media strategy. But we're in June here, and you just haven't heard a ton here. It just used to never be that way.
Well, they're all traveling around a lot, doing little community gatherings and stuff like that. I see Byron Donalds popping up on Fox News a lot, doing interviews, which is the right place for him to be.
Free media.
But it's also a Republican vote.
Of course.
It tends to be more conservatives on Fox, more liberals on CNN.
Ron DeSantis lived there so it didn't hurt him a bit.
And he still pops up on there once in a while, so he's addressing his crowd in his own way, and I think that's important. Any of the candidates who'd like to be on top of mind in Florida, give us a call. We're happy to have you. But I think that the Senate race is just lower key than the governor's race. Most people, I don't think, focus on the Senate race as much as they do the governor's race.
You've said since the outset this year, and it tends to hold true across election cycles. At the end of the day, people are going to have to decide how they feel about their pocketbook, number one, which tends to drive elections. And as a subset of that, the impact of the war with Iran and the on-again, off-again peace deal, oil prices, where will they be then? What will it mean to your pocketbook? Where will President Trump's support be? Even in a red state like Florida, will that be an added boost if he even needs one for a Byron Donalds? Or could it be something of an albatross around his neck? In Florida, that's somewhat harder to imagine being a red state. But walk our viewers through the calculus that we talk about candidates, but there's a lot of outside influences that you talk about a lot that ultimately drive who you have that gut feeling to choose.
Well, the economy. That's number one. Even when but, as we sit here today, this obviously could change, but gas prices have come down quite a bit. If gas prices are around $2 a gallon, $2.50 a gallon by November.
Not a prediction, by the way.
Not a prediction, but anything below 3 would be.
I haven't found it below 4 yet, so I've got to find your.
No, it's below 4.
Well,
you probably get that high test fancy gas.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You're
there for my 4-cylinder car. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not. Our crews laughing.
If grocery.
That's embarrassing with your crews laughing. It's a 4-cylinder. Nice car.
If grocery prices even out, maybe even go down a little bit.
Yeah.
But will people be that forgiving that soon, even if that happens?
If
they've had a whole year of being hit in the pocketbook, and if prices don't go down or they go even higher, if we have another issue with the oil, Straits of Hormuz or whatever, then the economy will continue to be a big issue. Everything else is secondary.
Well, isn't that political genius? Then his supporters will argue that Ron DeSantis has given everybody a pocketbook issue front and center.
You talking about the property taxes?
Yeah.
Well,
they've given him a pocketbook issue.
Well, we recently heard a prediction that it would not pass by somebody intimately involved with the amendment. I still think if the economy is really, really strong, it has a chance to get into 60. It's hard to get to 60, but I think it has a chance.
What else is on your plate, my friend?
Me? I don't have a plate. What's on your plate? I wish I had a plate. I'm hungry.
Yeah,
I have breakfast.
Oh, that's what I hear. Your stomach grump. No, it'd just be interesting how all of this plays out as all these people, as these candidacies shape up. I am intrigued. Gwen Graham, political royalty in Florida. I don't know if that moves the needle at all. She had her own unsuccessful bid some years ago.
Yeah,
and I don't know if people care about things like that anymore.
I think one of the things that's always been true about Florida is that every year we get a gazillion new residents.
Mm-hmm.
They move here from where, they go to Jersey, wherever.
Is that an official number?
Yeah, that's an official number.
A gazillion.
And so if you look over new residents in Florida over the last 5 years.
5 gazillion.
Yeah, 5 gazillion. They know nothing about Bob Graham. They barely know anything about Rick Scott, who's our sitting U.S. Senator, So I think that for people who've been here a long time, who were here during the Graham administration, who were here while he was in the U.S. Senate, he was highly thought of. He was, people regard him as one of the best governors ever in Florida. A very bad campaign for president that he had. But I don't think I think for a lot of voters, they don't connect those dots. And so they may, that's not so I don't think that Gwen Graham benefits that much from her late father. But I don't think the Graham name has the power it had 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the Jeb Bush name doesn't have the power it had. That's just, everybody becomes old news at some point.
Mm-hmm. And it'll be interesting this cycle to see. I think what's going to really drive a lot of people to the polls, as much as that's what we've been talking about. It's why we've been really trying to make a concentration in this last couple of months of talking again and again, because we do think when we talk about a pocketbook issue, and it's going to be your choice, of course, about property taxes. And I think that's going to be the driver that sends people to the polls, primarily pro or con. Agreed? Disagree?
Well, I think we need to remind voters out there, none of these, you're unhappy with what's going on in Tallahassee, you're unhappy with what's going on in D.C. Well, none of them appoint themselves. The governor's not an appointed job. They get there because of voters.
Mm-hmm.
So if you like or don't like what's going on, it's not because of what the governor, it's because it's who you vote for. So you have to vote.
I want to ask you, I used to close with this on our old PTV broadcast, To the Point, around 4th of July time. We're coming up on the 250th. Just sort of your thoughts as we talk about the nation's 250th and the celebrations around everywhere. But kind of to bring up your old closing thoughts on that, I think it's appropriate time.
I'll give you a couple of closing thoughts. One, my poor puppy has to suffer through the fireworks. I really wish there were fewer fireworks going on. I saw a quote American flag costume the other day, and when I was a kid, the American flag was sacred. You didn't wear it. You had certain rituals you had to go through for when the flag came down in the evening, how you folded the flag, where you stored the flag. Now we've turned it into bikinis, goopy T-shirts, your American flag hat, and I'm like, maybe for the 250th we could bring back a little more respect for the American flag and not treat it as a costume. But that's just me.
On that note, my friend, and I hope Bonnie and the fireworks, you get her those little doggy earmuffs. Much to talk about as we come into the deep of summer, and but again, as we just have passed our first year mark, Top of Mind Florida, and it's been fun as I look across our roster of guests and lists and staying on top of different topics and different newsmakers and people who are fun, and so we're launching really full bore into our second year, and we'll have plenty to do for the rest of the year. We picked a good year for a second year.
And if you're, if you're not already a subscriber on YouTube or Amazon or Apple or wherever, by golly, subscribe.